A king built a house for God, and when it was finished, the men who entered it could no longer stand. No hammer rang where it rose, no iron screamed against stone, and yet this silent mountain project would become one of the most feared and sacred places on earth. Because Solomon's temple was never just a building, it was a question cut into stone: how do human hands build a place for the God that heaven itself cannot contain? Before gold flashed in torchlight, before priests vanished into incense, before the cloud swallowed the sanctuary, there was only a scar of land in Jerusalem and a promise waiting to be fulfilled. David had dreamed of building this house, but David was a man of war. His life was iron and blood, victory and burial, and the temple would not rise in an age of clashing swords. It would rise in the reign of his son, Solomon, when the kingdom finally breathed in something it had not tasted for generations: rest. And that rest was not merely political, it was theological, a declaration that Israel would no longer wander with holiness in a tent. The God who had thundered in wilderness, moved with the ark, and ridden above the chaos would place his name in one terrible, beautiful place. So the chosen ground mattered. This house would stand on Mount Moriah, on the threshing floor of Araunah, a place already marked by judgment stopped, mercy given, and memory that could not be erased. Tradition tied that height to Abraham and Isaac, to the mountain where sacrifice and surrender met in unbearable tension, which meant Solomon did not build on neutral earth, but on trembling. Then the king looked north. Jerusalem had stone, but it did not have Lebanon. So Solomon reached to Hiram of Tyre, master of timber, trade, and sea routes, and asked for the cedars that kingdoms used when they wanted their glory to smell like eternity. And from the mountains of Lebanon came the trees, towering, resin-rich, aromatic, fit for palaces and sanctuaries, dragged down slopes, bound into rafts, and floated across the sea toward the city of David. Already the temple was becoming more than religion, it was diplomacy, commerce, engineering, and royal will stretched across mountains and coastline. Then came the labor, tens of thousands conscripted as carriers, stonecutters, supervisors, and craftsmen, an entire human machine set in motion so that one house could rise for the name of the Lord. Huge blocks of high-grade stone were cut from the quarry, shaped far from the summit, prepared out of sight, and that is where the story takes its strangest turn. When the stones reached the Temple Mount, the noise stopped. No hammer, no chisel, no metallic scream of iron against rock was heard at the building site. The violence of construction happened elsewhere, but on the holy hill, only silent assembly remained. Imagine standing there as wall after wall rises without the sound you expect, as if the mountain itself knows that something more than architecture is taking shape. And what rose there was not massive by later imperial standards. The temple proper was measured, restrained, almost severe from the outside, a porch, a main hall, and beyond that a chamber so sacred that everything in the building seemed to lean toward it. But the deeper you moved inside, the more the ordinary world disappeared. Stone vanished behind cedar boards, floors gleamed with juniper, walls bloomed with carved gourds, open flowers, palm trees, and cherubim, until the whole interior felt less like a building and more like a memory of paradise under guard. This was not decoration for decoration's sake, it was theology in texture, Eden in wood and gold, beauty wrapped around danger. Then came the gold, on walls, on doors, on beams, in the inner sanctuary, until firelight would have turned the chamber into a burning sun. And in the most holy place stood colossal cherubim of olive wood overlaid with gold, their wings stretched wide above the place where the ark would rest, guardians again at the edge of the unbearable. Outside, bronze spoke with a different voice. Huram, the bronze master from Tyre, cast the great pillars Jachin and Boaz, named like a declaration at the threshold, establishment and strength, as if the entrance itself warned every soul who approached that this house stood by more than human skill. He made the molten sea resting on 12 bulls, he made basins, stands, shovels, bowls, lampstands, tables, and sacred instruments in shining abundance, and suddenly the temple was not just a house, but a miniature world order, purified, guarded, and radiant. But for all its splendor, A darker question lay beneath the gold: who paid for this beauty? And what kind of kingdom could gather such treasure, such labor, such obedience, just to build one mountain sanctuary? That tension never leaves the story, because Solomon's temple stands at the intersection of worship and power, reverence and monarchy, heavenward longing and earthly burden. It is not a simple tale of faith, it is a dangerous tale of nearness. 7 years passed. The foundation laid in Solomon's 4th year became a finished sanctuary in his 11th, every detail completed, every surface waiting. Then Jerusalem filled, elders, priests, Levites, tribal heads, worshippers, and animals for sacrifice beyond counting. The city surged uphill in heat, dust, smoke, chanting, and dread. This was not merely an opening ceremony, it was a national approach to the edge of holiness. Then the ark came, the same ark that had moved through wilderness, crossed Jordan, and haunted Israel's memory was carried inward beneath the wings of the cherubim into the darkness of the inner room. The poles were so long their ends could still be seen from the holy place, like the last visible trace of something vanishing where almost no one could follow. And then everything changed. The priests withdrew, and the cloud came, filling the temple, filling the air, filling the space between architecture and presence. The priests could not remain to minister because the glory of the Lord flooded the house, and that was the true completion of Solomon's temple. Not when the final stone was set, not when the last gold plate was fastened, but when human control ended. That is the shock at the heart of the story. They built a house for God, and the first thing God did was overwhelm the men who entered it. Solomon understood the paradox better than anyone, and in the very moment of dedication, with smoke in the courts and glory in the sanctuary, he confessed the truth that makes the entire temple tremble. The heavens, even the highest heaven, cannot contain you, how much less this temple I have built. There it is, the temple mattered infinitely, and it was still infinitely too small. It was the center of worship, but not the cage of God, chosen, but never able to contain the one it honored. And that is why it was bigger than its measurements, bigger than cedar, bigger than gold, bigger even than Solomon, a place where beauty met terror, sacrifice met mercy, and human craftsmanship reached its limit while divine presence crossed it. Solomon's temple was astonishing not because it tried to hold heaven, but because, for one terrible and beautiful moment, heaven answered. And if this story moved you, like the video, share it with someone who loves scripture and history, and subscribe for more stories where the Bible comes alive.